"Angela, you're not sitting here." Kevin didn't lower his voice. He didn't have to. The VIP table was already listening. The ballroom glittered with money and hierarchy, crystal lights reflecting off tuxedos and power smiles. Angela stood beside the table in her emerald gown, her hand still resting on the back of the chair he had just pulled away from her. 15 years of marriage, and this was how he chose to place her. Not beside him but behind him, with people he believed mattered less. "This is a leadership table," Kevin added, sharp and final. "You wouldn't understand what we're talking about." The words landed quietly, but they cut deep. Angela felt the heat in her chest, the familiar sting of being dismissed not as a stranger, but as a wife reduced to an inconvenience. Around them, executives pretended not to watch while watching everything. This room thrived on humiliation disguised as professionalism. Angela didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply looked at the empty seat, then at her husband and smiled. Because what Kevin didn't know, what no one at that table knew, was that the dinner he was so desperate to protect was about to introduce its most powerful person. And she was already standing right in front of him. If you believe stories where quiet strength turns the entire room upside down, subscribe now to Canada's Heartfelt Tales. Stay because the next few minutes decide who keeps their seat and who loses everything. The moment Angela stepped deeper into the ballroom, the orchestra softened, as if the entire room sensed a shift it couldn't yet name. The carpeted floor muted her footsteps, but Kevin heard them anyway. Her presence disrupted his perfect little world of titles, networking and self-importance. He looked up, annoyance already forming on his face. "Angela," he muttered through a tight smile. "You're still here. Didn't we talk about this?" "We did," she replied, her voice steady, her expression unreadable. "And I listened. Tonight I'm done listening." Kevin inhaled sharply. "This is inappropriate. You need to leave before." "Before what?" she asked. "Before someone important sees me sitting near you." The CFO glanced over, sensing tension, but Kevin gave a stiff shake of his head, an embarrassing attempt to keep control. He grabbed her arm lightly. Not enough to hurt, just enough to claim ownership. "You're going to ruin this night for me." Angela looked at his hand. "It stopped being your night the moment you told me I wasn't worth a seat." She pulled her arm free. Kevin's jaw twitched, but before he could scold her again, a group of executives approached the table. Their timing couldn't have been more perfect. "Is that her?" whispered one of them, adjusting his glasses. "Is that Ms. Mitchell?" Angela turned just slightly, enough for her gaze to find theirs. The shock on their faces confirmed everything. They recognized her. Kevin didn't. The executives stepped closer with warm smiles and extended hands, bypassing Kevin completely. "Ms. Mitchell, we're honored you could join us," one said. "The board has been waiting for your arrival." The color drained from Kevin's face. "M. Mitchell," he stammered. "What are you talking about?" Angela didn't answer him. She simply greeted the executives with natural ease, slipping into a poised professionalism he'd never bothered to know she possessed. One of them gestured toward the main table. "Your seat is ready. Right this way." The four executives guided her forward, the entire VIP table watching with stunned silence. Kevin remained behind, frozen, unable to move. The CFO finally leaned toward him. "Kevin, what exactly did you tell your wife about tonight?" Kevin couldn't answer. His tongue felt foreign in his mouth. His chest tightened with something that wasn't pride or anger, something uncomfortably close to fear. Across the room, Angela took her place at the head of the table. She sat with elegance, folding her hands lightly, acknowledging the small murmurs of admiration around her. For once, she wasn't the quiet presence behind someone else. She was the center of the story, and every eye knew it, except the man who thought he owned her dignity. Kevin finally forced himself to walk over. The room parted for him, but not out of respect. More like people were stepping aside from a storm they didn't want to be caught in. "What is going on?" he asked, voice trembling. "Angela, please." She met his gaze calmly. I told you earlier, I'm done listening. You spent years treating me like a shadow. You forgot that shadows only exist where there is light. Kevin knelt beside her chair without thinking, his desperation showing. Why didn't you tell me? Why hide something this huge? Angela tilted her head. Kevin, you never asked about my world. You only wanted me to fit into yours. The CEO walked up then, ready to begin the evening's announcements. He lifted his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight is special. We celebrate not just our progress, but the leadership that made it possible. Please welcome our majority shareholder, Ms. Angela Mitchell. The applause was thunderous. Angela rose. Kevin sank. When the clapping faded, Angela approached the podium. Her voice carried through the ballroom, gentle but commanding, the kind of voice that didn't need volume to be heard. For years, I believed my place was beside someone else's ambition. I believed that supporting quietly was enough, until the day I realized silence can be mistaken for insignificance. She paused, letting the weight of the words settle. Respect is not a privilege reserved for the powerful. It is a basic human dignity. People nodded. Some lowered their eyes. Kevin stared at the floor. Angela continued. And sometimes the ones you overlook are the ones holding the walls up. You just never bothered to check. She stepped down, and the applause followed her like a rising tide. Kevin's hands shook as she retook her seat. He leaned over again, voice cracking. Angela. Sorry. I swear I can do better. Her eyes finally softened, not out of kindness for him, but out of acceptance for herself. I know you can do better, she said. But you didn't. And now you'll learn what happens when you decide someone else's worth for them. During the mingling portion of the gala, executives formed a circle around Angela. Some asked thoughtful questions about her vision. Others offered genuine respect. For the first time in years, she felt seen, not as someone's wife, but as someone with her own gravity. Kevin approached the group hesitantly. No one acknowledged him. The CFO even stepped in front of him, blocking his attempt to join the conversation. Not now, Kevin, the man murmured. This space isn't yours anymore. Later in the evening, Kevin found himself face to face with Angela again, this time away from the crowd. His voice was low, frightened. They won't look at me. They won't talk to me. Angela, they're treating me like you treated me, she finished. He swallowed hard. I can fix this. Please, don't destroy my career. I'm not destroying anything, Angela said quietly. I'm simply putting truth where it belongs. On Monday morning, Kevin was called into HR. His new title was waiting. The regional operations office smelled different from his corner suite. Older carpet, cheaper desks, no skyline view. His new manager, a former subordinate, greeted him politely but firmly. You'll start with the backlog files, the manager said. All 8 months of them. Kevin nodded stiffly. The humiliation wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. It lived in every glance, every whispered conversation as he walked through the hallways. He was no longer the man people admired. He was the man people pitied and sometimes quietly mocked. Meanwhile, Angela entered the executive floor with her own keycard. Employees straightened when she walked by. Not out of fear but respect. They saw a leader who had rebuilt her life in silence, then stepped into her power with grace. 3 months passed. Angela became CEO. The company flourished. Employees received raises. New programs opened. Her reputation grew far beyond the walls of Hartwell Industries. Kevin, on the other hand, adjusted to life in a smaller apartment. The BMW felt like armor that no longer protected him. He often sat alone at night, replaying the moment he pulled a chair away from the woman who ended up owning the table. One afternoon, he ran into an old colleague outside the parking garage. The man shook his head. Kevin, I still can't believe you treated her like that. You really didn't know who she was. I knew she was my wife, Kevin whispered. I just never knew she was a person worth respecting. The colleague walked away. Kevin stood there, realizing that some consequences don't arrive as punishment, they arrive as truth. And truth had stripped him bare. But Angela's story was far from finished. She had more decisions to make, more power to wield, and one final revelation that would leave the entire company in stunned silence. Because the real twist, the one that would change everything again, was just about to begin. Angela stood by the window of her new office late one evening, watching the city lights shimmer like quiet witnesses to everything she had reclaimed. The decisions of the past months, tough, painful, necessary, had carved out a version of herself she once believed she no longer had the right to become. She wasn't defined by the humiliation she endured, nor by the man who failed to see her worth. She was shaped instead by every moment she chose clarity over fear, truth over pretense, and dignity over comfort. Kevin's footsteps no longer echoed on this floor, and the silence he left behind didn't feel empty, felt clean. The company moved differently now, steadier, kinder, more deliberate. Employees greeted her not because of her title, but because they trusted the direction she set. Change didn't come from revenge. It came from finally stepping into the space that had always been hers. As she turned off the office lights, she caught her reflection in the glass. Someone who had walked through dismissal, doubt, and quiet ache, and still risen. That image stayed with her, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful transformation happens when you decide to stop shrinking for people who refuse to see you clearly. If stories like this speak to you, if they remind you of strength you've been carrying quietly, take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Canada's Heartfelt Tales so our community can continue to grow. Your support keeps these stories alive.